Okay, so we're going to start our third lesson on writing linear equations, and today it's going to be a focus on word problems. Before we do that, I'd like you to take a look at this picture and tell me which one doesn't belong and why. We'll pause here. Okay, so here's our slide you've seen a number of times now. We've been writing equations in slope-intercept form. A couple of quick things. I want to talk about what these pieces mean. So let's look at the y-intercept first. Just like when we graph, we start by plotting the y-intercept first. So that is the same thing when we're thinking about word problems. Your y-intercept is really your starting point, your starting spot. And then your slope, remember, is like your rate of change, okay? And then you'll have to figure out what do x and y represent. These will be your variables in your problem, and what do they represent? Okay, when we did our Desmos Lego activity, we were able to use that application to come up with a linear model that best fit those points. And if you have technology, which we can learn how to do that a little bit later with our graphing calculator, then this is a little bit easier, but you don't always have that. So sometimes then you need to use what you've got and apply those. So here's our first problem, and we're going to talk about the pieces in here. So first, let's take a look at this. It says Alex bought a new truck for $42,935. According to the dealer, the truck's value will decrease by $4,200 each year. Write a linear equation to represent this situation. And then part B says, when will the truck be worth $5,135? Okay. So once again, I want to determine what is what. Now, we know that his truck was $42,935. As I said before, your starting spot is your y-intercept. So you should be thinking, oh, that's where we're going right there. That's my starting spot. And then here is our rate of change. Okay, our rate of change in this particular case is it's decreasing by 4,200 every year. So this is your slope. That's your M right there. I don't know if you could see that, but that's an M there. And then here's another word that kind of helps figure out your variables. When you see the word per or each, that means multiplication. So if you think, okay, we know that an equation is y equals mx plus b. Okay, I know what my b is. I know my m is 4,200, well actually negative 4,200. And then what is my x? Well, my x then, that means that this is really it's per or each, so that means multiplication, and then my year is x. So mx. M times x, in this case it would be negative 4,200 times x, which is represented by the years. So before I write my equation, I like to say, what do these things represent? And so x is years, and then y would be equal to the cost of the truck, or the value of the truck. It would be another way to think about that. Okay, so now let's write our equation. I'm going to write it in y equals mx plus b form. You could flip these around a little bit if you wanted to, but I'm going to say mx. We know our slope is 4,200, but it's decreasing, so that should be negative 4,200. mx, and then plus 42,935. Now, you might have also written that another way. So if you also wrote that as y equals 42,935 minus 4,200x, where you had those flipped around, that would also work. Since that's kind of how it's written, that would work as well. But in keeping with the y equals mx plus b, I thought this might be a little bit easier to follow. Okay. So now, let's take a look at what we've got here. Part B says, when will the truck be worth $5,135? So this, you want to say, where does this go? Does it go here for x, or does it go here for y? That's really what you're doing, is plugging it back in and then going to solve. Well, it helps that we wrote this right here. So that means we know that x is years and y is cost. Well, $5,135 is cost. So we're going to be plugging it in here for y, not for x. All right, so let's do that. So my equation then will now become 5,135 equals negative 4,200x plus 42,935. And we're going to solve. So we're going to start by subtracting 42,935 from both sides. Okay, these cancel out. You break out your calculator to do this right here, and we end up with negative 37,800 equals negative 4,200 x. And then my last step would be divide by negative 4,200. Okay, if we do that, we get 9. Now, when it's a word problem, you need to answer with what the units are. So 9 what? So what does x represent? Well, if we look back up here, we know that x is years. So when I write my answer, I should say it's 9 years. And that's my answer. So after 9 years, his truck will have devalued down to $5,135. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's take a look at another type of problem that you may see. All right, oftentimes you'll see a table. Tables, you already know how to work with tables from some of your previous examples, but let's look at what we've got here. This table shows the rents and selling prices of properties from a game. How much is the rent for a property with a selling price of $230? So this one, they don't lay it out to write an equation and then plug back in, but that's really what you want to do, even though it's not spelled out for you. So really, remember, these are just points, and this is x, this is x, and this is y. So these are just points, and really to write an equation, you need the slope and you need the y-intercept. Well, we know how to find slope. We know that it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So really, I just need 2 of these points, and you can pick any 2 that you want. I'm just going to pick this point and this point. Okay, the first 2. If you picked the first and last one, that would work as well. So let's start there. I've got y2 would be 12, minus y1 would be 9, over x2 would be 90, minus x1, which is 75. Okay, so now if I simplify this, I get 3 over and then 15. Now I want to simplify my answer, so that is 1/5. Or you could also go, this is a nice decimal, so you could use, if it's a nice decimal, you can use that if that makes more sense. Okay, so now we've got our slope. We still need our y-intercept to be able to use this, so we're going to have to take and figure that out. So I'm going to y equals 1/5 x plus b. Now, this is exactly what you did before, so you're going to pick a point and plug this into one of these other x and y to solve for b. So I'm just going to pick 75 and 9. So I know 9 goes here. I'm going to multiply that by 75 plus b. Okay, now here we go. We're going to take and go, what is 1/5 times 75? If you multiply that out, you'll get 15. So we have 9 equals 15 plus b. Subtract 15 from both sides, and we get -6. Okay, so all that does really is gives us our equation, right? So our equation is y equals 1/5 x minus 6. So I want to use this now. I'm not done yet. I've got this, and now I just want to answer this question. I already kind of know what x and y are because of my table. My x is selling price, my y is rent. So this is the last thing that I have, is that this is $230, but that's the selling price. So I know that this represents x. So you have to figure that out. Now, always figure out, am I plugging in for x or y? In this case, I'm going to plug this in for x. Okay, so I'm going to say y equals 1/5 times 230 and then minus 6. And notice all I'm doing then is just figuring out what that equals. So I'm going to take and go ahead and plug that in. So 1/5 times 230 is 46. So I have y equals 46 minus 6, which is 40. Okay, so now in this case you can see here y is rent, and that's in dollars. So this is really $40 would be the rent. Now, does that make sense in our situation? You should always kind of see if this is really making sense. Notice we had a selling price of x of 230, which is kind of in between these. And then our rent was $40, which is in between these. So it looks like we're making sense there in terms of what we were given. But the answer to this would be $40. Okay, hopefully that makes some sense. All right, so now your assignment is 3 problems on writing linear equations with word problems. Hopefully that's good. Come in to ask the teacher time if you have any questions. See ya.